welcome back to the lecture series on refugee migration diaspora. So, we are discussing cinema and diaspora, and our today's topic is the film Bride and Prejudice. So, we will talk about transnationalism and transculturalism as well as hybridity through our reading of Bride and Prejudice. Now, migration and diaspora have been pivotal in maintaining ties and interactions across national borders. Uh, these phenomena have propelled the exchange and movement of people, cultures, as well as capital. When we talk about the movement of capital across the borders, we are not only talking about money or economic capital, we are also talking about the movement of cultural capital. What happens with globalization is that people get closer to one another's culture. People from across different parts of the world are familiarized about one another's culture, and due to the availability of commodities, from different parts of the world, and people's increasing knowledge and awareness about these commodities, what happens is that lifestyle itself becomes more multicultural, and we have more choices, right? So there are more options, there is a greater number of choices, and human life as such becomes more flexible with multiculturalism and transnationalism, with these movements beyond national borders. So in the recent decades, the globalized world has witnessed so many interesting forms of hybridities and interactions and new connections among people and institutions from across national borders. And these connections are in terms of social, cultural, political, and economic exchanges. So, this spread of economic, political, and cultural process beyond national borders can be referred to as transnationalism. According to Alvaro Lima, who is the director of research for the Boston Planning and Development Agency, such transnational interactions promote multiculturalism and greatly influence the migrant diaspora's view of community and personal identity. So, we see that community and personal identity constantly speak to each other. One shapes the other, and neither of these, is constant or permanent, or they do not have anything natural about them. So, just like a community or culture is in a state of flux, and it is constantly picking up new elements and getting rid of practices that are deemed as redundant. Similarly, personal identity is constantly being deconstructed and reconstructed. So, interactions across national borders also make it more likely that the immigrants will continue to be involved in the economic, social, and political spheres of their native countries, right? So, the new experiences, the new, practices that the migrants actually bring with them, or that the migrants acquire, also go on to shape their respective native countries, basic culture, overall culture, right? So the diaspora community, the immigrant population, has to tell a lot on their respective countries' social and political practices, as well as their economic scenario. So, critic Roland Robertson has explained globalization as, I quote Robertson, the process of the compression of the world and the intensification of the consciousness of the world as a whole, unquote. The term globalization became popular during the 1990s as a way of explaining the migrant diasporas, the complicated economic relations, as well as the culturally mixed communities that increasingly went on to characterize the making of the modern world. In a globalized world, transnationalism has affected the conventional notion of nations. The people, cultures, economies, and identities are now more interconnected than they ever were before. Hence, we see as a consequence blurring of the boundaries of nations. So, in a postmodern world, a nation as a category, which is already not something very old, is in some ways, a rendered redundancy because human life has become transnational in nature. Human life knows better than nation and national borders. They are constantly traversing across the borders and the pure categories called nations, right? Uh, Businesses and people are now operating on a global scale. So nations no longer govern the people and economies independently due to the flow of money and people alongside culture and ideas. So people, money, culture, ideas, these are flowing and flowing at a very fast pace. The world has become small, as we say, and it is not very difficult due to a very sophisticated communication methods. It could be human commuting from one part of the globe to another. It could be the communication, the transference or transmission of news or information through social media. Thanks to all these technological developments, the world is now small. People are more well connected, and culture and ideas do not grow in isolation anymore. They are constantly picking up from different quarters, from different directions, and so nations, as pure watertight categories, do not hold in a way. So, in the postmodern situation, we see that economic powers have reached the point of destabilizing or imperiling the stability of the category of nation state through new forms of circulation of capital through the MNCs or the multinational corporations. These new forms of circulation imply that investment decisions have, at least to an extent, passed beyond the control of the nation states. So, the speed of life, the fastness of life, the technological advancements, the technological boom, and the rate at which we receive and we transmit information, all these factors in a postmodern situation defy human life to remain the same for too long. So it has become quite kind of, we could say, malleable. Life has become more protean in a way, more flexible, acquiring new elements at all times. So, reopening of the world market, a return to vigorous economic competition, then breakdown of the hegemony of American capitalism, as well as decline of the socialist alternative, are some of the major postmodern conditions that humanity today faces. The new way of organizing and managing resources and people is not based on national boundaries, therefore. So, this has led to a mixed up and diverse world with distinct cultures and different places, often simultaneously, creating familiar and unfamiliar geography. So, at any given point in time, what we experience in terms of space is, at the same time a familiar and unfamiliar geography. The world is starting to look, similar in a way. The metropolitan cities across the globe are very similar in a way. The experience of living in a metropolitan city is not very different, regardless of whether we are sitting in India, somewhere in Delhi or Mumbai, or we are sitting in London or New York. So, this sameness is also a product, an offshoot of globalization. Now, critic Makonnen Tesfayeni refers to transculturality as spaces of hybridity and multiplicity, resembling a collage of differences, prefiguring new geographies as an amalgamation of the near and the far, the familiar and the strange. So, what happens as a result of transculturality, according to Tesfayuni, is formation of hybrid people experiences and spaces. So we see postmodern critics like Jabodria are talking about the optical illusion, where the nearness and the farness cannot be distinguished after a point. So, thanks to the media, if a war is going on somewhere in the West Asia or Middle East, we are getting all the details, all the correspondences from that part of the geography to an extent that after a point it doesn't seem very strange or unfamiliar to the audience, facing social media from across different parts of the globe. So there is a kind of optical illusion where there are no pure spaces or pure identities in terms of far and near. There is a kind of sameness that pervades, in a way, similar kinds of situations, right? So, this is a product of transculturality where the spaces are essentially hybrid and the spaces are simultaneous and multiple in nature. They are holding at the same time several meanings, right? Now, coming to cinema, how cinema celebrates this hybridity and transculturalism, we note that cinema plays an important role in both reflecting and contributing to the socio-economic and cultural interactions. As Andrew Higson, who is a professor of film and television, states, I quote Higson here, the media are vital to the argument that modern nations are imagined communities, but contemporary media activity is also clearly one of the main ways in which transnational cultural connections are established. Unquote. So, not only are the nations imagined communities, as Benedict Anderson has already professed through his very well known essay, we see that media plays a vital role in connecting the world, creating cultural connections that run beyond the national borders, right? Where new scopes of interconnections and new identifiers are created that are not restricted to the older social categories, nation being one of them, right? So, media plays a vital role in cross cultural connections, cross cultural identifications. Now, diasporic cinema crosses the boundaries of nations in terms of production, distribution, and exhibition, as well as in terms of thematic and formal cultural representations of distinct identities in the narrative of the film. So, diasporic cinema greatly props up the concept of transnationalism as a way of creating a diasporic film. The production, distribution, and exhibition has to or have to, as a way of creating a diasporic film, the production, distribution, and exhibition have to move beyond the borders. And we also see that there is a great lot to unpack in terms of the heterogeneity of themes and forms, such that diasporic film becomes a rich ground for unfurling new possibilities and for new experimentations. Now, critic Eo Aldia explains that Tony Blair's promotion of Cool Britannia as a way of showcasing the British multicultural identity resulted in the emergence of several films and television productions by diasporic filmmakers such as Gurinder Chadha and the likes, who have been exploring the experiences of British Asian diasporic community since the 1990s and 2000s. So during this period, the turn of the 21st century, we see diasporic filmmakers making various films that depict the experiences of the British Asian diasporic community. Uh, these films include Bhaji on the Beach, produced in 1993, Bandit Like Beckham, that came out in 2002. Both these films are by Gurinder Chadha, Bhaji on the Beach and Bandit Like Beckham. Then we have a film like East is East that came out in 1999, made by Damien O'Donnell, and Goodness Gracious Me that came out as a successful television show, in series. So it came out in series first in 1998, followed by 2000 and 2001, and it was created by BBC. So all these different experimentations with the representation of the British and Asian diasporan experiences are happening at the turn of the century in the 1990s and early 2000s, right? So Chadha stands out as one of the most popular diasporic filmmakers, portraying the diasporic experiences on screen. Her films such as Bandit Like Beckham in 2002 and Bride and Prejudice in 2004 are excellent examples of transnational cinema as well as transnationality. So, films like Bride and Prejudice wonderfully celebrate the concepts of transnationality, cultural hybridity, and transculturality. Bride and Prejudice, which is a romantic comedy drama, is a rendition of Jane Austen's classic tale, which revolves around the life of Mrs. Bakshi and her eagerness to find suitable husbands for her four daughters. The film stars Aishwarya Rai Bachchan as Lalita Bakshi in the lead, with American actor Martin Henderson in the role of Mr. Darcy, along with Anupam Kher, who plays Mr. Bakshi. So the film received funding from the UK Film Council and was distributed by Path Distribution in France and Miramax Films in US. So the film reflects the plot and characters of the classic novel Pride and Prejudice, which came out in 1813. Both the novel and the filmic adaptation handle a similar major theme of marriage. So, at the heart of both the original novel and its filmic adaptation is the question of a girl's marriage to a good suitor. So, the plot begins with the introduction of the Bakshi family, which resembles the Bennett family in the original novel. And the Bakshi family, in the case of the film, is located in Amritsar, India. It has a central character named Lalita Bakshi, played by Aishwarya Rai Bachchan, who parallels Elizabeth, also called Lizzie in the novel. Her mother, Mrs. Bakshi, played by Nadira Babbar, resembles Mrs. Bennett, and we see that this mother is obsessed with marrying her daughters and defending her family's social status. So, in the case of the novel, we see that Elizabeth is more concerned with her class, but here Lalita, the protagonist, is additionally also concerned with her family values as well as the values represented by her country. And this is more pronounced in the face of the ignorant and scornful American William Darcy, played by Martin Henderson. The filmic pastiche closely follows the original subplots of the novel, including elopement and romances of Lalita's other sisters. So, Lucky Bakshi, played by P.R.A. Chaudhary, elopes with Johnny Wickham, resembling the elopement of Lydia with George Wickham. And we see that Darcy helps Lalita in finding her sister Lucky. So, this episode itself subsequently brings the two people, Lalita and Darcy, close to each other by changing their perspectives about each other. And the enemies, they are initially enemies, but they eventually turn into lovers. And this trope of enemies turning into lovers has also been used in the original novel by Jane Austen. The adaptation of the English classic with Indian and American characters and the cast in a globalized setting not only breaks temporal boundaries but also, comes out of, fixed geographical grids in a way. In the words of the director, Hollywood and Bollywood tied in British sensibility. So she is bringing in the best of the Hollywood and the Bollywood elements, and they are commonly tied in British sensibility. Why British sensibility? Because a lot of Indianness, also the modern Indianness, the post colonial Indianness as we know it, is shaped by, is informed by India's experience of colonization. So there are, in a way, a lot of commonality, a lot of commonness between the British experience of different aspects of life and the Indian aspects. So, this is because we are tied to Britain in a way, or we are beholden to Britain in a way, owing to the colonial past that we have. A lot of our education, our mannerisms have been shaped through our colonial experience. So, the film could also be interpreted as the site where the categories of genre and nation have been time and again contested in a process that aims to create a new hybrid outcome. So there is no tying down to one national identity or one generic formula as such. This constant, outflowing or outgrowing of genre and nation results in new hybrid outcomes, new interesting experiments, basically. So, critic Joe Parnell suggests that Bollywood reflects as a lingua franca because the films are shown not just located or inhabiting the space and culture of regions. It could be Punjab, it could be Bengal or Rajasthan or other parts of India. Rather, Bollywood is more interested in reflecting, in celebrating the diaspora communities across the world. So, more and more of the diaspora elements are being incorporated into Bollywood. And although we see that a particular family hails from a region of India, it could be Punjab or Bengal, their characteristics, their practices are essentially very globalized, very well connected to the rest of the world. So they don't seem as bearing or carrying the essentialist thread or the essentialist burden of the region they come from. This Bollywood style of film, Bride and Prejudice, blurs many cultural boundaries in a similar manner. So, along with the film settings on three continents, the film is actually traveling or narrating across three continents: Europe, North America, and Asia. Further, it also crosses national boundaries in terms of production and distribution. So, the film is a Bollywood style adaptation of the classic novel Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which came out in 1813, with Bollywood musicals that are being played in both English and Hindi or Punjabi. The characters display diverse transnational characteristics. So, characters such as Balraj, played by Naveen Andrews, and Mr. Kohli, played by Nitin Ganatra, they represent non resident Indians or NRIs, overseas Indians, as well as diaspora communities, and they maintain strong ties with their home culture. In the opening dance sequence, Balraj, who is a British Indian barrister and a second generation British immigrant, displays his connection to his Indian roots through showing his prowess as a Bhangra dancer, how well he can dance the Bhangra, and his willingness to dance with the wedding party. On the other hand, the character Mr. Kohli, who is a Silicon Valley based NRI, aspires to have a typical traditional Indian wife. The film displays cultural hybridity through various elements, including the presentation of the characters, the depiction in the form of music and themes. Protagonist Lalita, played by Aishwarya Rai, is the South Asian counterpart of the classic heroine Elizabeth Bennet. and she reflects a hybrid identity on multiple occasions. She lives a traditional life at home. However, we see that when she visits Los Angeles, which is similar to Lizzie's visit to Pemberley, Lalita effortlessly transforms herself according to the American lifestyle. Her switching between Indian and Western dresses demonstrates her position as a modern Indian woman. And this switch from ethnic clothing and ethnic habits to the Western clothing and habits allow her beauty, the actor's beauty, to be presented and displayed in different cultural modes. William Darcy, played by Martin Henderson, is an American hotel owner, and he reflects a hybrid identity conforming to the film's plot. And the entire narrative is about how Darcy overcomes his prejudices for the Indian culture and ultimately adapts to the Bakshi family. So Darcy shows his snobbish character through rejecting to the dance request. He outrightly rejects it as a scornful man, and he even gets irritated by the overwhelming hospitality of the hosts from the Indian family. He complains about the provincials, the noise, and the pollution, among other things. So, initially, we see that he is not being able to adapt to the Indian culture and the Indian habits and practices. He gets simply irritated. However, at the end of the film, he is transformed. So, Darcy, we see that he learns to play dhol, and he marries an Indian woman in a lavish Indian style. So he has this desire to explore the real India. And he is lured by a hospitable, attractive, real India, which is modern in its outlook and yet maintains its family and cultural values. So, cultural hybridity is also explicit in the film through the musicals. The musical numbers performed by an African American singer named Ashanti, who intermingles both Eastern and Western rhythms. So, through incorporation of music by this African American singer Ashanti, Gurinder Chadha has paid homage to the Bollywood tradition, where many a times we see the cameo appearance of the celebrity, usually in item numbers, takes place without any direct involvement in the plot. So, this concept of item numbers sometimes, becoming bigger than the filmic narrative itself is something very common in Bollywood. So the item numbers, these musicals have their own fate, their own destiny to pursue, and sometimes they are remembered in isolation or regardless of the film. Sometimes the film doesn't work, but these songs, these item numbers, they travel beyond the scope of Bollywood. They are embraced by the global audience, and sometimes it happens even if the film itself, from which the musical originally came, tends to be forgotten. So, the use of song and dance as an alternative narrative system describes the Bollywood cinema. The colorful musicals, the item numbers have their own lives to live. So, the colorful item numbers in Bollywood cinema have their own lives to live and their own destinies to pursue. Now, Gurinder Chadha's work not only highlights contemporary cultural identities but also has elements of hybridity packed into the narrative. It shows the post colonial notions of mimicry and ambivalence, which have been described by Homi Bhabha. For historical reasons, we see that the formerly colonized Indian people see canonical English literature as part of their own cultural legacy. So, this is something I was talking about, how the British Asian culture has a lot of British elements already emerging from their own home country values, owing to the colonial legacy, the colonial past they have experienced. So, in many ways, the Indian and the British values are tied together. They are not very different from one another. Apart from its popularity as a cultural hybrid film, Bride and Prejudice has also been criticized for reducing Bollywood into stereotypes, and this has happened time and again, where the diaspora films have used Indian traditions, Indian practices, and beliefs in the form of stereotypes in very exotic fashion. So, Indians and their cultures have been exoticized and romanticized quite problematically in the way they are presented before the global audience. So, there is a problematic way of presenting the Indian practices altogether. It could be the Indian wedding, the Indian clothing, or even as basic as the representation of the Indian family values. However, a movie like Bride and Prejudice, all the same, stands out as a distinct example of cultural hybridity, and it is considered as a very successful artwork in terms of the cultural experimentations it has made and it has been able to achieve. With this, we come to the end of our lecture here today. Let's meet with a new topic and new round of discussions in our next lecture. Thank you.